President Trump's dream of an American manufacturing renaissance, the golden age, as he likes to call it, is missing one very important thing, critical thing, as a matter of fact. The workers to build the factories and then the workers to work in the factories. Here's the rub. His Secretary of Commerce, Howard Lutnick, says young Americans want nothing more than to return to U.S. factories.
High school educated people, they're going to train to do robotics mechanics. It's kind of like a supercharged BMW mechanic, you know, like you just can fix those robots. The army of millions and millions of human beings screwing in little screws to make iPhones, that kind of thing is going to come to America.
May not exactly be the best visual. Wall Street Journal says not so fast. They wrote, many men who don't go to college also don't want to work in factories or other blue-collar occupations, perhaps because they don't believe there's dignity in such jobs. Only 31% of blue-collar workers feel that their type of work is respected. With us now, Anna Kasparian, executive producer, host of the Young Turks. Anna, welcome back. Thank you. Is this a Democrat problem, a Republican problem, or just an American problem?
Well, I think it is a bit of an American problem because for, a few decades now, there's been more of an emphasis on pushing young people to, let's say, four-year institutions, you know, the typical traditional colleges and universities, as opposed to, you know, considering trade schools and some of the vocational options that are available for young people as well. And to be quite frank, American culture hasn't really shown that it values manufacturing jobs or individuals who work in these blue-collar positions. And so I do think that that's an issue. I think that there is a lot of dignity in individuals who work in the trades, you know, people who go to carpentry school, people who do HVAC work, right. Plumbers. These are incredibly important individuals. So it doesn't surprise me at all that that type of culture has kind of transitioned over to how people feel about manufacturing jobs. But make no mistake about it. I mean, people who work in manufacturing are doing important work.
Well, not only doing important work, they're oftentimes doing very, very well. I think that there was a time, not too long ago, right, where people who worked in manufacturing, blue-collar jobs, they clung to their guns and religion, in the words of Barack Obama. They were deplorables, in the words of Hillary Clinton, on and on. They were demonized and looked down upon. Younger Sargon had this to say in terms of what this manufacturing renaissance might do.
It's not just the destruction of the economic vitality of the working class. And then we imported millions and millions of illegals to work in construction, to work in, yes, manufacturing, what's left here, to work in landscaping, to work in janitorial services, to work in a whole bunch of jobs that used to give men access to the American dream.
Does there need to be a change in the messaging, and I think especially from Democrats on this, who want to win back working-class blue-collar voters but spent so much time demonizing them and telling them they weren't important?
I think words are one thing, policy is something entirely different. So when you push for free trade agreements like NAFTA, for instance, I mean, NAFTA was Bill Clinton's project, and that decimated certain industries or workers in certain industries in the United States. So I think that, you know, the focus on what Democrats allegedly say, I mean, it's usually, I don't agree with what Hillary Clinton said about the so-called deplorables, right? But she's specifically referring to Trump supporters, and as gross as that statement was, she wasn't specifically focusing on blue-collar workers or manufacturing workers. I think policy matters way more. What I'm actually more concerned about at the moment, though, is that we're not really getting the full story from the Trump administration. I mean, the market appeared to bounce back a little bit at closing today. And I think it's because people are now starting to realize it's not really about implementing long-term permanent tariffs that are going to bring manufacturing jobs back to the United States. I think some of Trump's tariffs are real. I think the auto manufacturing tariffs might remain. But I think he's just trying to renegotiate trade deals. And he's kind of made that clear today. I don't think this is really about bringing manufacturing jobs back. I think it's about renegotiating trade deals and justifying the $4.5 trillion in tax cuts that he wants to pass through legislation soon.
Thanks for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.